There are chambers within the mind we have neglected for far too long. The dust of anxiety, the fragments of regret, the noise of fear have quietly accumulated, turning what was meant to be a sanctuary into a stifling place. Yet just as a room can be cleansed, the mind can be restored with a single conscious breath, with a timely affirmation planted like a seed. The divine order returns. This journey does not lead you outward into distant places, but inward into the innermost chamber, where you discover that peace is not something to be sought, but the very climate you have carried within you since the beginning. The dusty room, a metaphor for a cluttered mind. Asterisk, asterisk. The abandoned room covered in dust is the image of the mind when fear, regret, and noise are allowed to pile up, forgetting that the mind is a sanctuary where one must carefully choose the furniture of thought. The dusty room mirrors the mind of a person who is surrendered to fear, regret, and the invisible noise that quietly accumulate. Imagine a room that was once sacred, a corner of refuge for light and peace. But over the years of neglect, dust has covered the furniture, cobwebs spread across the corners, broken objects lean against the walls, and the air has lost its vitality. Each time you step inside, you feel suffocated, heavy, and stripped of freshness. This is exactly the mind of someone who fails to care for it, who refuses to sift and filter, who allows chaotic thoughts to crowd in. Joseph Murphy once declared that the mind is a sanctuary, a holy house, and you must be the one who decides what remains and what must be removed. Yet most of us forget this truth. We allow negative thoughts, painful memories, and condemning voices from the past to linger, to pile higher and higher, until that sacred space becomes obscured. And then we wonder why we can no longer hear the guidance of the divine, why we no longer feel clarity or peace. The simple truth is that the inner room has become too noisy and too crowded for light to enter. Look closely at yourself and you will see this disorder manifest in your reactions, in hurried decisions, in sleepless nights, when the mind is cluttered with fragments, when worries echo like the constant noise of a marketplace. You cannot focus on what truly matters. You cannot remember that within you lies an infinite source of energy, a treasure of wisdom and peace. Instead, you hear only the whispers of fear. That is how the dusty room operates. It robs you of the ability to see your true essence. Yet in that very place lies a great opportunity, for once you realize that the inner room of the mind must be cleansed, you have already stepped onto the path of returning to the light. No one desires to live in a house that is cluttered and suffocating. People spend hours scrubbing, arranging, and decorating their physical homes, why then abandon the sacred room within, the place that determines the health, success, and peace of your entire life. What you hold in your mind will reflect into your circumstances. If you store fear, the outer world will always echo insecurity. If you fill it with faith and noble images, life will blossom with order and opportunity. Many people believe they are burdened by circumstances, but in reality, they have turned their minds into warehouses of rubbish. They keep criticisms, past failures, and dreadful scenarios that might happen. All of it is like old newspapers and rotting papers scattered in an abandoned room. Yet the mind was never created to store trash. It was created to be a sanctuary where inner light radiates, where creative ideas and powerful faith are nourished. You have the right to choose the spiritual furniture that remains. You can place within it the chair of peace, the table of wisdom, the lamp of faith, and the window of hope. When you do this, the room instantly changes. Light floods in, dust is swept away, and the air becomes pure above all. You hear once more the gentle whisper of the divine life within you. Joseph Murphy taught that every image you impress upon the mind is printed upon the subconscious, and the subconscious never resists. It is like soil. Whatever seed is sown will grow. If you plant the seed of fear, you reap insecurity. If you plant the seed of peace, you reap harmony. The dusty room is a warning that if you do not consciously plant, weeds will grow. No garden maintains its beauty without care. It requires the gardener's hand, and so it is with the mind. It requires daily tending, constant awareness to sift, to remove, to choose. Each time you exhale and imagine yourself blowing away old dust, you are cleansing that sacred room. Each time you choose to hold a positive thought instead of following anxiety, you are replacing broken furniture with new ones. No one else can do this for you. You are the keeper of the key and the architect of your inner space. The dusty room is only a temporary image. You can transform it into a radiant sanctuary. And when the room is renewed, your outer life also changes. Inner light will always shine outward. Begin today. Do not wait until the noise in your mind becomes a weight too heavy to bear. The truth is, you were never meant to live in a dusty room. You were born to dwell in the sanctuary of peace and power, the subconscious as soil, the law of sowing and reaping. Asterisk, asterisk. The subconscious is like soil that never rejects a seed. Every thought repeated takes root. Sow belief, and you reap harmony. Sow fear, and you reap insecurity. Have you ever asked yourself, what kind of seeds are you planting in your mind each day? The subconscious is not a chooser. It is soil so loyal that it never rejects anything sown into it. If you repeat thoughts of fear, doubt, or self-blame, they will take root like weeds, quickly spreading and covering the garden of your inner life. If you plant seeds of peace, trust, and love, they too will take root and grow into shade that blesses your entire life. The law of sowing and reaping in the subconscious is unchanging. Every thought is a seed, and every seed finds soil in which to germinate. A person who constantly thinks of failure will encounter failure in every opportunity. A person who nurtures the image of success will naturally attract situations, people, and circumstances that support that success. The subconscious does not ask what you want. It simply reflects honestly what you repeat with feeling. That is why choosing your thoughts is not entertainment. It is the act that determines destiny. Remember, the soil does not distinguish between grain and weeds. It only nourishes all that is given. The subconscious is the same. It does not argue. It does not resist. It only accepts and magnifies. The question for you is this: are you tending your garden, or are you leaving it for weeds to invade freely? How many times in a day do you speak words of faith and positivity to yourself? And how many times do you allow fear and doubt to repeat like an old song? This matters, because it is the difference between a life filled with peace and a life constantly filled with unrest. Some say, I cannot control my thoughts. But the truth is, you can choose which thoughts are repeated. Just as when a seed falls into a garden by accident, you have the right to pull it out or to nurture it. When you allow a negative thought to repeat, it is you who waters it. It is you who nourishes it. And soon it will grow into a tree with deep roots, difficult to remove. On the other hand, a positive thought, if you are willing to repeat it, to water it with faith and emotion, it too will grow strong and bear good fruit. This is not mere theory. It is the law by which the mind operates. Scripture has said, A man shall reap what he sows. Joseph Murphy emphasized that the subconscious is the creative center, shaping your health, your career, your relationships. If you sow images of illness, it will reflect in the body. If you sow images of health, it will adjust to bring the body back into balance. Many have witnessed miraculous change simply by changing the kind of seeds they plant in the subconscious. A businessman who failed repeatedly did so only because he believed he was unworthy. But when he began sowing new affirmations each morning, such as, I am guided by infinite wisdom, I am worthy of success, within months he attracted opportunities he had never seen before. It was not the outside world that changed, but his subconscious, and it led him down a new path. Therefore, begin inspecting your garden today. Do not let it be overrun with weeds. Choose one good seed, one affirmation, one clear image, and plant it with breath and faith. Water it daily with repetition and feeling. Leave the rest to the subconscious, for it never argues. It only knows how to faithfully bring you back to what you have sown. I want to pause here to ask you, in this very moment, if you look deeply into your mind, what kind of seeds do you see growing? Is it faith or fear? Peace or unrest? The answer no one knows better than you, and I thank you for listening, for pausing to look into your own garden, because only when you recognize yourself in this story do you truly begin the journey of transformation. Recognizing clutter, the Red Sea in faith as the pathway, asterisk, asterisk. To see clearly the anxiety in body and mind is to strip it of its power. The Red Sea is the metaphor for chaos. Faith is the dry path, and each breath is a step through the troubled waters. Anxiety comes in many forms. It tightens the chest, pulls the shoulders down, shortens the breath, and fills the mind with relentless visions of disaster. When it is not recognized, a person is swept away without even knowing it. But the very moment you look straight at it, call it by name, its power begins to dissolve. Joseph Murphy emphasized that healing begins with identifying the false belief that dominates. Anxiety is not truth. It is only a shadow. The truth is the presence of the divine within you, greater than every outer illusion. Remember the story of the Red Sea. It is not merely history. It is a mirror of the inner life. The rising waters are the noise of anxiety, fear, and confusion. The dry ground is faith, opening right in the middle of chaos. So it is within your own mind. Anxiety may roar like stormy seas, but faith can part the waters to reveal the path. Faith does not chase away the noise with outward force. It simply stands, and the chaos must divide. Each counted breath, each return to deep breathing is a step on that dry ground. Every step is an affirmation. Every step a declaration that you are no longer a slave to the noise. Some live their entire lives within the sea of chaos, never realizing the path was always there. They struggle, they swim, they fight against anxiety and collapse in exhaustion. But the sea never promised you a way to swim. It promised you a way to walk. That is the difference when you shift from panic to faith. When you inhale and feel the weight in your chest, you no longer pretend it is not there. You observe it. When you exhale and release the shoulders, you feel that burden begin to drift away. This is how you sever the power of anxiety, not bidenial, but by seeing it for what it is. Clutter does not vanish because you force it out. It vanishes because you see it is only a shadow. In the light of awareness, it cannot stand. A man once told of his sleepless nights, tormented by the noise in his mind. He tried to command it to be silent, but the more he fought, the louder it became. Then he learned to watch his breath, to recognize anxiety as smoke rising and dissolving with each breath. He no longer needed to fight. He saw anxiety as waves, but faith as dry land. From that moment, each night, he crossed the inner Red Sea and entered rest in peace. This is what Joseph Murphy called the law of the mind. When you affirm the higher truth, the false loses its hold. Recognizing anxiety does not make you weaker. It makes you stronger because you reclaim your authority. Picture again the Israelites stepping into the sea. They did not make the waters vanish. The waters were still there, but faith carved out the path. In the same way, anxiety may appear, but faith parts the way for you to walk through. Every breath is a step in the desert of peace. Every step strengthens the knowing that you walk in the presence of eternal life. The body begins to change, shoulders rise, the chest is freed, the eyes brighten, the mind grows lighter. You realize clutter was never your essence. It was only dust on the surface. Once you see the path of faith, you no longer fear the dark. You know that beneath every wave, dry land has always been waiting. Each deep breath is another step forward. Each exhale is another burden released. This is the journey across your inner Red Sea, where chaos must yield to clarity, and you return to the truth that you were never abandoned, never without a way. That path is faith within you, always waiting to opening the sacred page. Lectio Divina, asterisk, asterisk. When the inner room has been cleared, opening the scripture is like opening the door of the soul. Reading slowly a short line such as, "Peace I leave with you," receiving rather than analyzing. When the inner chamber has been swept free of dust, the doorway to a new journey opens. It is the moment you sit down, open the page of scripture, not as if reading a book of history, but as if opening the very door to the depths of your being. Lectio Divina does not demand analysis of grammar or theological debate. It calls you to receive a single line, a phrase, as one receives light through a window. A short sentence is enough. For example, the words, "Peace I leave with you." That peace is not merely ink on paper. It is living water flowing into the very roots of your subconscious. When you read slowly, you allow the word to fall like a seed onto soil that has just been cleansed, no longer choked by weeds. The word does not need to be dissected. It needs only to be drunk in, to operate on its own as a stream of life. Imagine yourself seated in a quiet room, a candle casting a gentle glow. The noise outside has faded, leaving only you and a single page. You place your hand upon it, open it, and the words rise before your eyes. In that instant, you are no longer the one reading. You are the one being read. The scripture is no longer on the page. It enters your soul like breath itself, like raindrops soaking into parched soil. Joseph Murphy once said that a single verse can change an entire life, not because of logic, but because repetition with faith engraves it upon the subconscious, and the subconscious does not argue. It only receives. When it receives the word of peace, it will produce peace in every reaction, in every sleep, in every decision. There was once a woman who lived in the clutter of endless tasks and family pressures. She chose one very short verse, reciting it each morning, breathing in half the line, breathing out the other half. At first, it felt mechanical, another duty added to her crowded schedule. But within weeks, she noticed the atmosphere in her home had shifted. Her voice became calmer, her eyes brighter, and even she was astonished at how important decisions became clearer. What had happened? No miracle outside, but a reconstruction within. The seed of peace she had planted in her subconscious had sprouted and spread its shade over her entire life. When you repeat a verse with your breath, it ceases to be letters and becomes life. It enters the blood, the heartbeat, even the way you see the world. It becomes the spiritual climate surrounding you, so that every circumstance approaching you is touched by that peace. This is the power of Lectio Divina. You do not need much, not pages upon pages. Only one verse is enough, but that verse must be received as water sinking into soil. Pause for a moment. I want to ask you right now, are you willing to open a sacred page and let one verse become a new seed in your mind? If you are, leave a sign. It may be an affirmation, I am ready to change, or simply the number one, that will be your word to your own subconscious, declaring that you are ready. And I thank you because your presence in this journey is not just listening, but participating. When you respond, you have already sown the seed, and that seed will grow, bringing peace, not only to you, but also to those around you. Sowing seeds with word and breath, asterisk, asterisk, repeating a verse in rhythm with your inhaling and exhaling impresses it upon the subconscious. For example, a woman who recited each morning found within weeks that her home grew calmer and her decisions clearer. Sowing seeds with word and breath is the practical step that transforms the sacred page into living reality. A verse of scripture, if only skimmed, vanishes like passing wind, but when it is placed into the rhythm of breath, it becomes a constant stream, sinking deep into the subconscious. The subconscious does not recognize letters on a page. It only records what is repeated with emotion and rhythm. That is why every time you inhale and whisper half a line, every time you exhale and release the other half, you allow that seed to take root in the quietest soil within you. A woman once caught in the rush of a busy life experienced this truth. She chose the verse, peace I leave with you, and each morning, before the clamor of the day arrived, she spent a few minutes uniting the words with her breath. At first, it felt mechanical, like one more task added to her schedule, but something subtle began to happen. The conflicts in her home no longer escalated as quickly. The tone of words became gentler. The atmosphere grew calmer. She had not set out to change others, but the climate within her shifted, and her subconscious reflected that change into her surroundings. Joseph Murphy often emphasized that repeated words are like drops of water falling steadily on stone, carving out a path. A short verse, if sown with breath, soon becomes a natural habit, shaping decisions and reactions. The words no longer need to be forced into memory. They rise spontaneously in moments of need. This is the power of joining word and breath. Breath is the unbroken rhythm of life, faithful since the day you were born. When you join sacred words to that rhythm, you allow it to carry the verse through your entire being. Every cell is bathed in this new energy, every organ reminded of order and peace. This repetition is not to persuade a distant God, but to engrave upon the tablet of the subconscious a new pattern. And the subconscious, like fertile soil, only knows how to make it grow. A man who faced constant stress at work chose the verse, I rest in the peace of God. He repeated it each night with his breathing, inhaling half, exhaling the other, until sleep came gently. Within weeks, he noticed that whenever pressure rose, The verse surfaced automatically in his mind, as if his inner being had been trained to return him to peace. It was no longer effort, but reflex. This is the aim of sowing seeds with word and breath, to transform a truth into a natural reflex. Each time you join a word to your breath, you build a bridge from the conscious to the subconscious. The conscious mind selects the verse, the subconscious remembers the rhythm, and the life within you soon reflects that new pattern into the outer world. You do not need many verses nor long passages, only a short word filled with life. When you read, do not rush. Let the words fall like seeds upon the soil, and breath be the water that nourishes them. Do not worry about the result, for once a seed is sown, it grows by its own law. Your task is only to be faithful, to repeat steadily, giving the subconscious time to register and transform it into a living condition. You will find the difference not in an instant miracle, but in a gradual yet certain shift. Your mind will cease to react with panic and begin to respond with peace. Family, work, health, all will be infused with this new climate. This is the true way of sowing, not by forced effort, but by gentle, steady persistence. When word and breath have become one, the subconscious will carry them deeper than you imagine, until one day you awaken to find yourself living in an atmosphere of peace, as if it had always been there, simply waiting for you to open the door and step inside, anchoring with breath, the fire sheltered in the hand. Asterisk, asterisk, breath is the anchor that holds the flame of the sacred word against the winds of doubt. For example, a young man plagued with anxiety whispered, "I rest in divine peace," asterisk, until even his body began to believe. Breath is not merely the air flowing in and out to sustain life. It is the anchor that secures holy affirmations in the midst of doubt's storm. A verse repeated only in the mind can be swept away like seed fallen on hard ground. But when it is anchored to the breath, it becomes a flame shielded from the wind. You inhale and feel the affirmation enter. You exhale and offer it back to the infinite. In this way, the flame no longer flickers, but shines steady and warm. There was a young man who lived under the weight of constant anxiety. Every night, as his head touched the pillow, his mind erupted with waves of fear and memory that drove sleep far away. He had read many books, memorized many verses, but the words skimmed across his mind and never touched his body, until he discovered a simple secret. He chose the affirmation, "I rest in divine peace," asterisk, and began to whisper it with his breath. Inhaler, "I rest," asterisk, exhale, "in divine peace," asterisk, breath by breath. Life was no longer mechanical, but became the bridge linking conscious thought to the subconscious. Within weeks, something remarkable occurred. His body began to believe before his intellect did. His shoulders released, his heartbeat slowed, sleep came as gently as a breeze. What years of struggle could not achieve, breath accomplished, because it kept the flame from being extinguished by doubt. Joseph Murphy called this the science of prayer. For the subconscious does not argue. It only records what is repeated with rhythm and feeling, and breath is the most faithful rhythm. Present since your first cry at birth, when an affirmation is tied to breath, it is no longer adrift in the mind. It is held by the body, pulsing with the heart, vibrating in every cell. This is the moment when words become reality, not only in thought, but in flesh. Picture holding a candle in the wind, without cupped hands to protect it. The flame will vanish. Doubt, fear, and old memories are the wind, and breath is the hand that shields, keeping the flame alive and glowing. You do not need to fight the wind. You only need to remain faithful to the rhythm. The flame endures, and its light grows stronger with time. This is the secret to transforming a verse from language into presence. When you inhale and exhale with the word, it passes beyond shallow memory and imprints itself in the deepest chamber. You could call this times the power of voice within. Asterisk, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. It is not a fleeting sound in the mind, but an inner room to which you come back whenever the world trembles. One woman shared that after years of praying with tension and pleading, she changed her approach. She let one affirmation flow with her breath without strain, simply breathing and letting the word become her rhythm of life. Soon she found the words arising even when she did not try to recall them. They were present at meals, at work, in her sleep. Breath had held the seed in place, and the subconscious had transformed it into a natural reflex. As you practice, moments of doubt will still appear. Painful memories will still try to intrude, but instead of fighting, you return to the breath. Each inhale and exhale is a step across dry ground through the sea of chaos. Step by step, the waters must part. Breath is the anchor, keeping you from being swept away. Breath is the hand shielding the flame. Breath is the path leading you back to peace. When an affirmation has been anchored in breath, it ceases to be theory. It becomes the climate you breathe each day. And in that moment, you discover you have entered a new space where anxiety has lost its power and peace has become reflex. This is the space of the voice within, where you do not merely hear words, but truly return to live in them. Meditatio, turning the word in the heart. Asterisk, asterisk, to turn a phrase as one would turn a jewel, until the word shifts from language into presence. Like alchemy that reveals and burns away impurities, such is the process by which an angry man slowly changes his reflexes through the prayer. Create in me a clean heart. Meditatio is not the mechanical repetition of words, but the turning of the word within the heart until each syllable becomes light, until thought becomes presence. Imagine holding a jewel in your hand, turning it beneath the sunlight, each angle flashing a different color. So it is with a verse. Each turn reveals a new brilliance. A scripture that descends from lips to heart changes its nature. From language, it becomes life. From theory, it becomes reality. The ancients smelted metal by keeping it long in the fire, turning it continually so that impurities would rise and be burned away. In the same way, when you turn the word in your heart, falsehoods, old habits, and distorted beliefs rise to the surface, to be consumed by the light of the word. A man once quick-tempered prayed the line, "Create in me a clean heart," asterisk. At first, he spoke it like a task, heavy with doubt, yet he persevered, breathing it in, whispering it in still moments. One day, when anger surged, he was startled to find the line rising up before the anger could erupt. It was no longer effort, it was reflex. That was the moment his subconscious had been rewired. The jewel of the word had cut through the hardened stone of old patterns. Turning the word in the heart allows it to seep into many layers. At first, the mind wants to analyze, to ask about meaning and context, but the heart does not analyze, it only listens. And when the word is repeated long enough, the mind grows silent, the heart begins to open. Then the word is no longer sound in the ear, but fragrance in the body. Like the scent released from a crushed flower, the fragrance is not the petals, but the essence. So presence is not the letters, but the essence of the word. This process requires patience, like a farmer who plants seed and sees nothing day after day, yet waters faithfully, knowing growth is hidden. Each time you turn the word in your heart, you are watering the seed. You do not need to see results immediately, only to remain faithful. And one day, the peace you repeated will become the atmosphere surrounding you. The forgiveness you turned within will become the reflex when confronted. The clarity you planted will rise in the moment you need it most. This is both the science of spirit and the art of living. A single phrase can become the background music of a life if you give it time. Many seek miracles outside, but the true miracle is when the word is engraved upon the heart until it reshapes reflexes, habits, and character. You will see old wounds surface, forgotten memories return. Do not fear. Allow the word to meet them, to let its light touch the shadows. This is the alchemy of the soul, where the fire of the word burns away the rust layer by layer. Each time you turn the word, your heart is refined a little more, and one day you will realize the word is no longer something you repeat, but something that repeats you. It has become heartbeat, breath, the very way you live. And when that happens, the clutter of the past, the old habits, the false beliefs, all will have lost their ground. What remains is light, peace, and purity. This is the fruit of times. Meditatio, asterisk, when the word has been turned long enough to become flesh within you. Oratio, affirmative prayer as spiritual science. Asterisk, asterisk, oratio is the moment when words cease to be mere repetition and become an intimate dialogue between the soul and the infinite source of life. It is not the cry of fear, nor the plea of one in lack. It is scientific affirmation, the voice of faith declaring that what is spoken is already true. When you say, I am healthy, the life of God flows through me, asterisk, you are not begging for a miracle from afar. You are planting a command into the subconscious, and that command becomes law. It becomes reality. The subconscious, like soil, does not distinguish between faith or doubt. It simply records what is repeated and nourishes it with all the energy of life. If you constantly say, you are tired, it will transform fatigue into your experience. If you affirm that divine vitality is flowing within you, it will adjust every organ and cell to reflect it. This is scientific prayer, prayer not built on fleeting emotion, but on the immutable law of mind. A woman once afflicted by illness prayed for years out of fear, saying, Lord, please heal me. Please take this sickness away. Asterisk. Yet the more she prayed this way, the weaker she felt, because deep inside she still believed the illness held power over her. When she was guided to change her words, no longer asking but affirming, I am whole, the life of God operates in me. Asterisk. At first, she felt as though she were pretending, but repetition, though it began as pretense, became faith. Her subconscious heard the recorded, and her body began to change. Within months, medical results confirmed what she had affirmed by faith. It was not begging that healed her, but the command of affirmation planted deep in silence. Affirmative prayer is utterly different from prayer of fear. When you beg, you affirm that you do not have. When you declare, you affirm that you already have. And the subconscious makes what you affirm your experience. Joseph Murphy said that scientific prayer is impressing the right image upon the subconscious and allowing it to operate by law. No pleading, no bargaining, only firm and consistent declaration. Consider how often you have spoken to yourself, I am not good enough. I always fail. I will never change. asterisk. These two are prayers, negative prayers, and the subconscious received them as law. Until life reflected them, why not transform your prayer into new affirmations? Each morning whisper, I am guided by infinite wisdom. I am a channel of peace. I am strong and clear. Asterisk, repeat not as a charm, but as a reminder to your subconscious. Let the words move with your breath, align with your heartbeat, so that body and soul speak in unison. A young man once bound by shame and failure prayed constantly in desperation, begging for a chance, pleading for a miracle. But when he learned affirmative prayer, everything shifted. He chose the words, I am a child of the infinite source. I am endowed with wisdom and strength to succeed. Asterisk. Each night he repeated them, not with fear, but with conviction. After weeks, his mind grew clearer, opportunities arose, and he had the courage to take them. This was not luck, but the inevitable result of sowing the right seed in the subconscious. Horatio transforms prayer from passive petition into active creation. Each affirmation is a command zone, and the subconscious, like a loyal engine, will translate it into life conditions. That is why you must be careful with every word you speak. A single positive sentence repeated can build a life. A single negative one repeated can destroy it. Scientific prayer is the discipline of choosing the right statement, sowing it with faith, repeating it in silence, and letting the subconscious nurture it into fruit. Do not think you need many words. One simple, clear, decisive sentence carries more power than 1,000 scattered utterances. When you declare, I live in peace, asterisk, the subconscious shapes your responses, circumstances, and choices to bring you to peace. When you affirm, I am wealthy through the infinite intelligence within me, asterisk, the subconscious opens the channels for creativity and opportunity. When you say, I am loved and I radiate love, asterisk, the subconscious reflects it in your relationships. This is law. No debate, no resistance, only fulfillment. Every affirmative prayer is a seed placed in deep soil. Do not rush to see results. Seeds sprout in silence. One day you will behold the harvest, and remember, it began with a single line spoken in faith. This is the science of spirit, where word becomes law, and law becomes living reality. Horatio is the declaration that you have stepped out of the shadows of begging and into the light of creation. Here, you are no longer a petitioner. You are a co-creator with the infinite source of life. Breath carving the path, the drop that wears away the stone. Asterisk, asterisk, breath is the quiet yet relentless road that engraves a new pathway into the subconscious. Every old habit, no matter how destructive, was formed by repetition, and the only way to replace it is through another repetition, stronger and more faithful. A drop of water falling upon stone leaves no mark once, nor even 10 times, but after thousands of drops, the solid rock yields. The subconscious is the same. It does not resist. It does not refuse. It simply makes way for whatever is sown repeatedly. When you join an affirmation to your breath, you are letting each drop fall faithfully, day after day, until a clear path emerges. A man known for his hot temper chose the affirmation, the spirit within me is greater than all, asterisk. At first, in moments of anger, he could not recall it quickly enough. The fire of rage rose faster than any thought, yet he did not give up. Each morning upon waking, each night before sleep, he whispered the line with his breathing. Inhale, the spirit within me, asterisk, exhale, is greater than all, Asterix. Each breath was a strike upon the stone, each word a drop of water, and after weeks, something strange occurred. When anger began to stir, the affirmation surfaced first, faster than the flame of old habit. He paused, breathed, and peace returned. This was not mystery, but the inevitable fruit of engraving a new path in the subconscious. Old habits may still appear, but once a new road is carved, the mind will choose it with greater ease. This is the power of breath, tireless patience, a quiet current that never ceases. Each inhale with an affirmation carves a groove into the stone of the mind. Each exhale deepens it a little further. Day after day, the old path is abandoned. The new one becomes familiar. This explains why so many read hundreds of books, listen to thousands of sermons, and still do not change. They take in ideas, but never engrave them with repetition. Knowledge floats on the surface, while habits are etched deep in the subconscious. To change, you need a deeper tool. And breath is that tool. It does not require strain, only loyalty. Picture walking through thick forest where no path exists. Each step is hard, but if you walk the same line every day, gras pens aside, the earth becomes a trail. That is how new habits are formed. Each breath with affirmation is one more step. The more you walk it, the clearer the path becomes, and one day, when your mind must react, it will choose the new trail instead of the old one, of fear or anger. This is the law of the subconscious. It does not know right from wrong. It only follows the path most often taken. That is why breath gives you a natural, effortless way of training, until affirmation becomes rhythm, not duty, but life itself. Joseph Murphy said, the subconscious is like a book that never stops recording. Every breath with affirmation is another line written. Write enough lines, and the old script fades. Negative habits are overwritten, like faint ink beneath new words. You do not fight the past. You rewrite the present with faithful breathing. The body itself joins the process. As you inhale with an affirmation, the chest expands, tension is released. As you exhale with affirmation, the shoulders drop. Pressure dissolves. The body mirrors the new belief, and the subconscious records it as truth. Breath does not touch only the mind, but every cell, every heartbeat, every nerve. This is why an affirmation tied to breath carries multiplied power. It ceases to be thought alone and becomes full experience. Remember the drop of water, one fall does nothing. But persistence turns impossibility into inevitability. Likewise, one day of affirmation cannot erase a lifetime of habit, but weeks and months of breathing it in engrave it until the subconscious has no choice but to obey. One day you will find, in a moment where you once surely would have reacted with fear or rage, the affirmation rises first and guides you down the new road. It is no longer you straining to change. It is simply that you have walked long enough on the new path for it to become default. This is the power of breath carving the way, the power of the drop that wears away the stone. It teaches that change does not come through bursts of effort, but through patient persistence. And when you trust this process, you will no longer fear old habits, because you know that every breath is another strike, every affirmation another drop, and in time, even the hardest stone must yield to the faithful stream, resting beyond words, the fullness of silence. Asterisk, asterisk. When an affirmation has been repeated long enough, a wonder occurs. The words begin to dissolve into silence, like a melody that, after its final notes, leaves behind not sound, but a lingering stillness, like the surface of a lake at dawn, utterly calm, not empty, but luminous, filled with presence. This is the stage where the words have fulfilled their mission, like a bird that carried you safely through the storm and then comes to rest on a branch, allowing you to rest in perfect peace. In this silence, you no longer need to repeat, because the word has sunk deep into the subconscious, rooted firmly in the soil of the soul. The word no longer resounds on your lips. It has become the very climate of your spirit. You breathe, and the breath itself is the word. You sit in stillness, and the stillness itself is prayer. This is the state Joseph Murphy described as union, when the conscious and subconscious no longer argue, when the mind and God meet without distance. You no longer strive, no longer force. You simply exist. And that existence is enough to know you live in the infinite life. One woman who practiced Lectio Divina told of how, after weeks of repeating a single line, "Peace I leave with you," asterisk, one morning she sat as usual, but this time she no longer wished to speak. She simply remained still, and in that stillness, she felt herself upheld by a gentle power that needed no name. Peace was no longer a prayer, but the very atmosphere she breathed. That was the fullness of silence. This silence is not the frightening void of emptiness, but the fullness of being saturated. It does not strip you. It unfolds you like a child who stops questioning, stops struggling, and simply rests in a mother's arms. No further words are needed, for presence itself is enough. In this moment, the breath becomes the bridge into infinity. Each inhalation, each exhalation is a wave, not carrying words, but carrying life itself. This is what can be called times the power of voice. Within times, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. It is not mere sound, but an inner sanctuary no one can take away. No circumstance can shatter. In that space, God is no longer a distant concept, but a living presence in every cell, every heartbeat, every pulse of blood. You are no longer pleading for peace. You are living in peace. You are no longer searching for love. You are love itself alive. The fullness of silence is not the end, but the convergence, the place where every effort, every repetition, every affirmation merges into one and leaves you standing upon the pristine foundation you have carried since the beginning. Here, word becomes silence, and silence becomes the highest language, the language only the heart understands, the language of union. And once you have touched this place, you will no longer fear the noise of life, for you will know that beneath all chaos, that inner space remains unchanging. Eternal breath has pure presence, asterisk, asterisk. When words have dissolved into silence, what remains as breath, and breath at this stage is no longer technique, no longer numbers counted, but pure presence. Each inhalation is more than air filling the lungs. It is the affirmation that life is flowing within you. Each exhalation is more than air released. It is surrender, the quiet reminder that you are enough. Here, there is no effort to control, no struggle to maintain rhythm. Breath flows naturally, and you allow yourself simply to merge with its cadence. Each inhalation whispers silently, "I am here." Each exhalation confirms, "I am enough," asterisk. This is communion with life itself, no words needed, no ritual required, only presence. When you realize your breathing is not an isolated act, but part of the vast rhythm of the universe, anxiety loses its power to return, for clutter, however subtle, can only live in the cracks of distraction. But when you are fully present with breath, there is no room for clutter to survive. Remember, the very air you inhale has passed through forests, drifted across oceans, sustained millions of living beings. The air you exhale re-enters that same eternal current. You are not separate. You are woven into the invisible fabric the universe has spun since the beginning. This awareness widens the mind, melts the boundaries created by fear, and dissolves the illusions of limitation. One craftsman once shared that he experienced his work as prayer. As he carved each line of wood, he let his breath guide him. And in that rhythm, he no longer felt alone, but upheld by a force far greater. Breath turned labor into communion, daily action into sacred ritual. This too is available to you. You need not be a monk or mystic. You need only recognize that breath is already the bridge. When you let each breath testify to your presence, peace arises without effort, like light flooding when the window is opened. Once you taste this state, clutter cannot return as before, because you will know from experience that beneath every layer of dust, a clear, living stream has always been flowing. Each time tension arises, you need only return to the breath, and immediately the current carries you back to the truth. You are enough. You are here. You belong to a life greater than yourself. This is pure presence, not a striving to achieve, but the recognition of what has always been. The subconscious opens, receiving a new seed, asterisk, asterisk. When breath has washed away the layers of dust, when silence has softened the inner soil, this is the moment the subconscious opens to receive a new seed. The subconscious is like a field, long covered with weeds, now tilled and watered, ready for planting. Every image you impress upon it at this stage carries special power, for the subconscious does not argue, does not question. It simply accepts and magnifies whatever is entrusted to it. If you continue sowing the old thoughts, you will harvest the old seasons, but if you choose to sow a higher image, a new order will begin to govern your life. There was a man who believed he was unlucky, that no matter how hard he tried, failure would follow. He carried that belief for years, and indeed, life mirrored it back to him. Then he learned how to plant a new seed. Each day he affirmed, divine order governs my life. Asterisk. At first the words felt foreign, but he persisted, breathing them in, sowing them in silence. After months, he noticed his life shifting in color. Opportunities he once overlooked stood clear before him. What once seemed random began to flow with order. What had changed, not the outer world, but the inner pattern. When the subconscious is given a new seed, it creates new responses, and reality reshapes accordingly. This is the law of mind, as immutable and precise as season following season. And so this moment is your opportunity. Have you recognized what kind of seed you have been carrying? Are you still allowing old thoughts of misfortune, helplessness, failure to take root? Or are you ready to replace them with new seeds? Affirmations that carry strength, peace, and divine order. I want to ask you now, if you could choose one new seed to plant in this very moment, what would it be? What affirmation would you sow so that your inner soil, from today onward, becomes fertile and full of life? Let your answer arise within you, for that is the first step toward true renewal. And I thank you for not only listening to this story, but for allowing yourself to participate in the process. Your presence here is proof that your subconscious is opening, ready to receive a new planting season, and that season will determine the entire harvest of tomorrow. Faith becomes vision, seeing the form in the stone. Asterisk, asterisk. When the subconscious has received the new seed, Akiya transformation begins. Faith is no longer a fragile hope, no longer waiting amid doubt, but a clear vision, The one who truly believes does not merely wish they see. Like the sculptor standing before a block of stone, others see only weight and formless rock, but the sculptor already beholds the figure within. Each stroke of the chisel is not creating something new, but releasing what has always been there. Faith works the same way. It sees the finished image even when the outer form still looks chaotic. This is the power of vision, to see with the inner eye what the outer eye cannot yet perceive. The Red Sea once stood as an impossible barrier, but through faith it became dry ground. The Israelites did not need the waters to vanish. They needed only to step into the vision of a path already opened. And that very faith parted the sea. So it is with life. Clutter, anxiety, confusion may swirl like storming waters, but when faith becomes vision, you see the way forward in the very midst of disorder. No longer bound by appearances, you act from inner clarity, and each step reveals what was prepared long before. The man who once believed he was unlucky, after planting the seed of divine order, one day entered the stage of vision. He no longer waited for luck. He began to see clear arrangement in every event. When opportunity arrived, he recognized it instantly. When challenges appeared, he understood them as preparation, fragmented pieces connected into a pattern of order. This was no longer vague belief. It was sight, faith. When it matures into vision, gives you new eyes. You look at the stone and see the figure. You look at the desert and see the oasis. You look at the raging sea and see the dry path. This power keeps you from turning back because you know more deeply than appearances suggest. Those without vision stop, complain, despair. Those with vision move forward, for they have seen the door open before their hand has touched it. It is this vision that makes affirmation more than words. In the mind, it becomes light that guides the path. And when you walk by that light, life ceases to be a chain of random events and becomes an ordered journey, guided step by step. This is the stage where faith has matured, where the seed rooted in the subconscious rises as a strong tree, and your vision is its first fruit, the healing stream of silence. Asterisk, asterisk, silence is not an empty void, but a quiet medicine flowing through the soul. When the dust of noise has been swept away, when words have dissolved into breath, you begin to sense a gentle current moving within. It is not loud, it is not hurried, yet little by little it melts bitterness, loosens the knots of tension stored in body and mind. The body is always a faithful mirror of the mind. When the mind is tense, muscles tighten. When the mind is at peace, the whole body releases. And so, when you enter silence, every fiber, every heartbeat, every breath aligns with a new pattern. Shoulders drop lightly, breath deepens, pain subsides. This is not an external miracle, but the inner healing stream that has always been present. One man carried bitterness for years after betrayal. When he first tried sitting in silence, painful memories rose stronger than ever. He thought he could not endure them, but instead of resisting, he allowed the silence to cover him like water washing over wounds. Gradually, the bitterness softened, anger dissolved, and finally forgiveness emerged, not because he forced himself to forgive, but because silence accomplished what reason could not. Silence also flows outward, touching relationships and the shared space around you. A woman who sowed peace into her breath said that within months, the atmosphere of her home had changed. Conversations once tense became gentle, disagreements resolved more easily. She had not tried to persuade anyone to change. It was the climate of peace within her, radiating outward like fragrance filling a room. Such is silence. It does not keep healing for you alone. It harmonizes the environment you inhabit. Imagine a still lake receiving a drop of fragrant oil, its aroma spreading across the entire surface. The peace you nurture in silence works the same way. It spreads through your eyes, your voice, your steps, until those around you feel it without a word spoken. This is times the power of voice. Within times, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to, no longer a fleeting sound, but a sanctuary of healing to which you can return anytime. Each return immerses you in a stream of peace that flows through your bones, your blood, your relationships. The world outside may remain chaotic, but where you sit becomes an oasis, and from that oasis you rise carrying a new climate, so that wherever you go is touched by the healing stream. This is the inevitable fruit. When silence is tended long enough, it becomes medicine for the body, balm for the soul, and harmony for the life around you. Everyday life transformed, asterisk, asterisk. When silence has taken root, you step back into daily life carrying a completely new climate. The same kitchen where pots once clattered, the same table where arguments once erupted, the same familiar street you walk each day, yet everything feels different. Because the atmosphere within you has changed, the world around you begins to reflect it. Once, a careless word could spark instant reaction. Anger rising like fire to dry leaves. Now, you notice a pause. Breath returns as a faithful companion, drawing you back to peace before rage can seize control. A verse once planted in hours of silence now rises as reflex, sheltering your mind from the storm. This is proof that the seed has taken root, that the subconscious has been reshaped. Daily life does not change by rearranging circumstances, but by transforming the way you inhabit them. In the market's noise, instead of confusion, breath carries you back to center. Before a mountain of work, instead of panic, you sense a stream of peace flowing underneath, guiding you to act with clarity. Intense conversations with loved ones, instead of snapping back, you find yourself softening, and your words emerge, clothed in gentleness. Others may not have changed, circumstances may not have shifted, yet your reactions have, and that opens the door to every further change. Picture a lighthouse amid howling winds and crashing waves. It stands unmoved, its steady light guiding ships through the storm. The one who practices silence and breath is the same. They do not erase adversity, but they become a lighthouse within it. Their presence radiates safety, helping others find direction without many words. A woman once shared that she no longer scolded her children as she used to, not because they suddenly behaved better, but because she had a pause. Each time anger rose, she inhaled, and the affirmation of peace returned. Instead of yelling, she spoke more slowly, with fewer words, but with greater strength and clarity. Over time, the climate of her home changed, not because others altered their actions, but because the atmosphere had been transformed at the root. A businessman also testified that constant stress once made him short-tempered with employees. But after practicing breath with a verse, his outbursts diminished. He began listening more, pausing longer before speaking. Unexpectedly, his staff felt safer, more loyal, and work flowed better. His inner change spread outward as tangible results without his forcing anything. This is the sign that everyday life has been transformed. The same spaces, the same tasks, the same faces, but the experience itself is new, because within you, everything is new. Breath and sacred word are no longer exercises, but foundations. They rise before Fear can speak. They guide you. When chaos surrounds, one day you realize you no longer seek peace in faraway places. You are living in it. Right in the middle of the ordinary, this is the summit of practice, not retreating to mountains or monasteries, but turning each moment of daily life into holy ground. At the dining table, you breathe gratitude. At work, you feel inner strength. On a noisy street, you find the rhythm of silence. And as you carry this climate wherever you go, you become living proof that life can be transformed not by waiting for outer change, but by beginning with a single conscious breath, a single affirmation sown in the subconscious. This is the very path Joseph Murphy emphasized: to cease living as a victim of circumstance and to begin living as the architect of your inner world, the inner sanctuary and the return in simplicity, asterisk, asterisk, the destination, after all the steps, after breath, after affirmation, after silence, is the inner sanctuary. This sanctuary is not built of stone, not hidden on a distant mountain, not within a grand temple. It has always been within you, waiting for you to sweep away the dust and step inside. And when you find it, you realize the journey does not end there. The point is not to remain in peace alone, but to carry that climate back into daily life. The inner sanctuary does not demand ornate ritual, nor endless chanting, nor complex ceremony. Sometimes a single conscious breath, a short affirmation, is enough to open the door. Whisper times I am here. I am enough. Asterisk. Or times divine order governs my life. Asterisk. And immediately the space returns, the space of peace, of strength, of a life greater than your own. This simplicity is the sign of maturity. At the beginning, you may need to repeat often, to count, to lean on images, but as you go deeper, it becomes lighter. You no longer force, you simply remember, and memory itself opens the door. This is the power of the subconscious once reordered. It becomes foundation. It becomes default. The more you live in that sanctuary, the more you see your outer life transformed. Circumstances still unfold, but you bring the unshakable climate with you. In debate, you no longer need to win. You preserve harmony. In work, you no longer rush. You let divine order guide each step. In family, you no longer try to control you. Sow peace simply by being present. This is the art of returning in simplicity. Not adding burdens, not making spirituality another task, but letting it permeate every small act. Washing dishes, you breathe consciously, and the sanctuary opens. Walking the street, you whisper a short phrase, and the sanctuary appears. Sitting down in the midst of pressure, you place a hand on your chest, inhale deeply, and you are home again. Joseph Murphy taught that the subconscious moves according to the seeds you plant. When you sow belief in the divine presence within, your entire life reflects it. You need not control results. You only sow and surrender. Sow with breath, sow with word, sow with remembrance of the inner sanctuary. After sowing, let divine order do the rest. It is this surrender that lets you live light yet firm, no longer burdened with controlling every detail. You trust that a greater order is at work, and when you align with it, life unfolds in the best way. This is not resignation, but cooperation with divine law. The sower does not sit over the soil, watching each minute for the seed to sprout. He sows and trusts the earth to do its part. So with you, sow peace, sow clarity, sow strength into the subconscious. Then let divine order nurture and bring forth fruit. To live this way is to taste a strange freedom You walk through life without fear. You face challenges without panic. Your words are simple, yet they carry the weight of steadiness, and others feel it. Even if you never explain, you become living proof that the inner sanctuary is real, and from it all else is rearranged. At last, you understand the journey was never to reach some faraway place, but to remember the chamber always within, and each time you forget, each time clutter returns. You need not struggle. A single breath, a short affirmation, a moment of presence, the door opens, and you are home. The sanctuary is yours, and you can carry it everywhere. This is the fullness of the path, to live light yet firm, to sow and surrender, and to let divine order draw your life into a current of peace and completeness. After all, you no longer need to strive to prove or to grasp. You need only remember, only return. A single breath is enough. A single short affirmation is enough for the inner sanctuary to open and for divine order to continue its work. You have walked through the dust. You have sown the seed. You have seen the form within the stone. You have touched the healing stream of silence. Now you carry that peace into every step you take, every conversation you have, every room you enter, and the world will change, not because it has shifted on its own, but because you have changed the climate within. Remember, you are not merely hearing this voice, you are returning to a familiar space. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to